Have you ever met someone so deluded that they deserved a gold medal in mental gymnastics? What were they deluded about? Some guy I knew who called himself a guitar expert but was totally crap at playing guitar. Could not tune it even with a tuner and charged 30 quid for a lesson. And £2.40 if he had to walk to the place. Released about 10 albums in his own bedroom. He's in his mid-30s. Thinks he's a rock star and genuinely a talented musician. He's in his mid-30s. Well, there you go. Everyone knows real rock stars die at 27. My truly psychotic ex-roomie who, immediately upon moving into the apartment with me, assumed that he was entitled to all of my things. He thought all of my furniture was his. All my electronics, also his. Even my own freaking time was entirely his, and when I tried to explain to him that normal people don't barge into each other's rooms every time they have something to say, no matter how mundane, he didn't seem to understand the concept of privacy and personal spaces. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "When I have something to tell you, you are going to hear it." This guy went so far as to start locking my cat inside his room. I am so happy to no longer be sharing a space with him. Sounds like a more aggressive Cosmo Kramer. My sister has a drug problem and ditched her daughter, 9 at our parents' house and went homeless for a few years. I don't know where. Daughter gets the idea that I abandoned her. Mom and dad must be talking crap and turning her against me. I still love my sister and I hope she starts doing better soon. My father, the man walked out one day when I was 13. Didn't say a word. Didn't bother calling for a week. No sort of indication of where he was or if he was okay. He made no effort to be any sort of father for most of the years after that. For most of that time, he didn't even bother contacting us. He attempted to reconnect after many years. The man wrote in a letter the Christmas he tried to reconnect saying that he was sorry I was denied his knowledge. He still sees himself as the victim 10+ years later. The man has some real delusions that need to be addressed with medical attention. I actually made a face like I smelled a fart at the line about you being denied his knowledge. I'm sorry. I take pride in your accomplishments, because you sound like you have a good head on your shoulders. Whatever knowledge he might have imparted would probably have held you back emotionally. A friend of mine had cut in line for some food at a place near school. Someone later cut her and she genuinely complains about how annoying it is that everybody freaking cuts. I hate that I have to do this to even it out. I knew a girl who had completely convinced herself that using C on the daily was healthy, that it was organic and that every single example of it being addictive or ruining someone's life was a media conspiracy. We're not friends anymore. TBF, that sounds exactly like what someone on C would say. A guy I work with who is thoroughly convinced that he is going to marry and father the children of a female hard rock vocalist who gave him a hug after he met her during a post-show meet and greet and did a photo with him. When I mentioned that both her and her co-vocalist were hugging anyone who asked as long as they asked nicely and weren't getting grabby with them, he said that when she hugged him it was much more special and intimate, signifying that she was eventually going to leave her boyfriend, who plays in the band with her, and they, him and her, 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 him and. I had a friend who is the absolute pro at mental gymnastics. Some examples. One, having a discussion with his GF about how good teenagers are morally nowadays. He said, "I supported my mom financially despite having very little money for my own. No young men does that nowadays." GF: "How do you know? Do you know all these men in their life?" Friend: "No, but I see a lot of them on the street." Double quote. No joke, he said that in a dead serious way as if it was a valid argument. 2, not a specific one, but he would change his mind drastically in short time periods, sometimes even seconds, without realizing it at all. One day it's good to drink a lot of water, the next day it's poison. One day the moon landing was fake, then he has some bulletproof evidence it wasn't. He's the type to read something on the internet, no matter what source, then believe it 100% and push his new agenda on everyone he sees until it gets changed up again, rinse and repeat. I won't be surprised if he is a flat earther now. 3, he always pointed out flaws in others that he was doing himself all the time. And he was a notorious gossip guy. For example, he mocked people lifting only to impress girls while he did the exact same. Facebook photos etc inclusive. Same goes for literally everything he did or said. I never resolved the mystery, but he would be an interesting case for every psychologist. But I am just glad I don't waste my time with him anymore. Gave a random dude some cash at the skating rink since he couldn't afford something. 20 minutes later, he comes with his brother to get more because I obviously didn't want the money. You give a mouse a cookie. My ex-wife ditched me and our daughters after cheating and then acted surprised when I stopped making her car payments and it got repoed. Well, after we had split, she claimed the car was a gift and that me paying it off while she was busy holding court in her vagina was, somehow, an ironclad commitment. Sounds familiar? How dare I break my promise or some stupid crap. Talk about entitled. One of my former friends needed a place to stay. She had told me her boyfriend at the time was hitting her and ultimately making her life miserable, so I offered her my spare room for a while until she could get her feet on the ground. I later found out after a month or so she had quit her job and was basically getting up at 8 AM, going to her car, waiting for me to head to work, then going back inside. I told her she had to go and she legitimately said she had renter's rights. I've never laughed so hard in my entire life. She was dead serious and thought her 2-month, if that, stay had entitled her to anything. I offered to call my landlord on the spot and she began packing. I have no clue how she came to the conclusion, but it was funny and definitely deserved a medal. In some places she actually could claim tenants' rights after living with you that long, even if she never paid you a penny. Anyone thinking about letting someone move in, make sure you know exactly what tenants' rights are in your area before saying yes. Had a patient and his wife that were so insane that I just can't believe they made it to adulthood even. Patient is young, 30s, dying all of heart failure, laying flat in bed on a life-sustaining machine. He's fully conscious and able to consent for himself, mind you, and she was convinced every single female nurse was looking at his penis, wanted his penis, was lusting after his penis. She would make him sit in the bed in his own crap until a male nurse or tech was available to clean him, sometimes hours. One day the heart failure is getting much worse and we tell them he's going to have to go on a continuous dialysis machine. She straight up told him, if you don't get your crap together, I'm not bringing your kids up here. Then yelled at him for hours about his kidneys failing being his fault. He loved the attention. By far the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I'm a physics major. A fellow major in the department told one of our professors, who has a PhD in astronomy, that the moon landing was faked and the earth is flat. He also believes there is an alien hub on the dark side of the moon, but the aliens don't want to get involved with Earth because humans are too chaotic. By that he means we apparently haven't ascended yet by merging our souls and psyches, or some other bulls like that. He watches Ancient Aliens and crap like that as if it was factual. This dude takes notes on that stuff. Imagine needing to take notes on a show that just repeats the same 4-5 bullet points every 10 minutes or so. Guy I know, his granddad died and left him a lot of money and he always wanted to be Mr. Big, suit, large cigar and a watch so big you could see it from space, kind of big boss man. So he opens 2 shops and opens up one comic book game shop and a fast food place with seating area. Every day he would pee someone off because that's how he was, and he would bar people, and of course you bar one person, their friends would leave too. He would constantly say, oh yeah, we're raking it in, all the money, and keep making grand gestures of how much cash he had just flowing in. Fast forward a year, both places are closed, and he still insists that he did amazing and only closed and sold them off because he wanted to go on to property development and being a landlord. I know from his mom and dad that he was almost bankrupt and had to flip the properties ASAP, but still insists that he was this genius businessman. Guys and butthole. My mother, who blamed me for looking like my father, and blamed me for making her beat me, and blamed me for not killing myself. She blamed me for being alive. I'm really sorry you had to go through that, and at the hand of a parent, of all people. Hopefully things are better for you now. My uncle is a flat earther. The whole family tried to convince him he's wrong. He said if the earth was round the oceans would fall off, and if gravity was real birds wouldn't be able to fly. The best part was when he said my mom was a sheep for believing the earth was round, but when they talked about religion he said that we should have faith in what we're told. I fully, wholeheartedly believe that flat earthers do not believe that nonsense in a vacuum. There has to be multiple failures in education and multiple other ridiculous beliefs, like super religious or conspiracy theories, in order for them to be so fundamentally deluded. Something that stupid needs other stupid pillars to hold it up. I'm pretty sure everybody has seen the anti-vaxxer who said I didn't get flu shots and the rest of my family did, and it's so hard trying to prove vaccines don't work when my husband is sitting over there perfectly fine and I feel like death. Kinda sounds like her theory is wrong. Funny how that works. My coworker, he is so full of crap it's a wonder he doesn't have brown eyes and he's this way about everything. He told us recently that he is completely fluent in Spanish because he took a year of Spanish in college. He proved this by reading stuff from Google Translate and the absolute worst accent you've ever heard. If you were going to parody a gringo trying to speak Spanish, this is the accent you'd use, but he was 100% serious. He came in a few months back talking about how Hamilton was his favorite musical of all time. Started questioning him on it and found out that he has never seen it. Doesn't know the names of a single song from the soundtrack, doesn't know the names of any of the big showstopper numbers, and doesn't even know the plot of the musical. Huge fan of the musical he's never seen and doesn't know the plot of. He constantly comes up with crap like this though. It's ridiculous. Kinda like Brian Griffin. My cousin failed most of his classes in high school and believed he was going to be a psychiatrist. How was he going to get into college? Easy. Most colleges only look at your junior year. She believed that smartphones give you brain cancer, but only so long as you held it to your ear and on. And only smartphones. This was apparently due to the radiation they put out that flip phones don't. Her solution to this, if she ever got a smartphone, was to use a Bluetooth headset so that she would never have to put her phone to her ear in order to talk. Think about that. Take as much time as you need. My housemate thinks that Venus collided with Earth in the past. Global warming is caused entirely by the sun expanding, and that the typical alien appearance seen in media, little green man with big eyes and a big head, was based off of aborted fetuses. I can't make this stuff up. Bonus fact, I'm majoring in environmental science, so I'm constantly being told by him that my degree is useless pseudoscience. I did hear a theory on the Discovery Channel about Venus colliding with Earth very early on in their development as planets, but I'm fairly certain it's still just a theory. All that other stuff though, holy crap. There's this woman at a church I go to who was telling me about when she swam with dolphins and she believed they healed her in some way. She also mentioned that Jesus didn't look Jewish enough. I used to argue with this guy on a physics forum who was convinced that standard tuning in music would usher in the apocalypse, and that anyone who understood the Pythagorean comma also understands the keys to the universe. Also, he had no idea that there was a difference between a harmonic minor and a natural minor scale. That person sounds bat squeak insane. I know a girl who has cheated on damn near every boyfriend she has had. It's always their fault, though. He doesn't pay enough attention to me, so it's not my fault I blew my landlord. He doesn't share my kink, so it's his fault the local street gang ran a train me. He's been sick and not up to sex, so obviously I can't be blamed for riding his brother like a champion bull rider. The girl is a freaking mess. No matter what crap happens in her life, it's always someone else's fault, and she wonders why I, and others, have cut off contact with her. My recent ex-GF constantly talked about becoming a therapist while drunkenly failing out of 4 straight semesters. Would elude me buying new pants to cheating on her while also tracking my phone. Would leave her at the liquor store or gas station and accuse me of hiding it there on purpose. Constantly trash talked everyone around her to the point nobody would come to my house anymore. While she was a 32-year never employed overweight alcoholic who lived on Facebook. The list could go on. Thanks for letting me vent. Crap man. At least it's over and done with. You'll do better. I have a friend who was obsessed with a guy for a decade. Everyone told her he was leading her on. She never listened. She only clued in it wouldn't happen when he changed his relationship status on FB. Despite never dating, she still calls him her ex. Oh, I live with one. My so is personally morally opposed to birth control and antidepressants. even surgical forms of birth control like a vasectomy or a tubal. And what does he do for a living? He's a pharmacist who dispenses birth control and antidepressants every dang day. I had a friend who, I guess, genuinely thought he was really good with women. Used to brag about women throwing themselves at him, regular threesomes, etc. I of course never witnessed it, never saw proof. Even when I hung out with him, women didn't really seem arsed. He could have been a compulsive liar, but I highly doubt it. The trick is to have incredibly low standards. My mom. I know, yeah, you were probably expecting Up's mom. There's a bloke I work with who is a bit of a Fruit Loop and thinks he's dating someone that I'm sure is a catfish. In his exact words, I have a girlfriend from Mexico. She's nice and I text her every day and message her on Discord. When asked what's her name, oh, I don't know. She's shy, but I do talk to her and send her things. Red flags, folks, but there's more when asked, so have you spoken with her? You know, with words? Oh no. She doesn't like to talk, but I've been thinking of surprising her and showing up at her house. We live in the UK, he's a delusional and much more, but that's only one car on the crazy train. In high school I had a friend who had a family full of complete idiots. One day the entire family tried convincing me that JFK wasn't shot by a sniper, but by Secret Service in the front seat of his car. Even claimed that their grandparents had taken video of the man turning around and clearly shooting JFK up close. I asked them if they could provide footage, but they of course made up some crappy excuse as to why I can't. And why did no one else see this happen? According to them, everyone else who was there that day mysteriously disappeared. A few weeks later I brought it up and they claimed we never even had the conversation. Someone got to them. My mother-in-law. She is a hardcore drug addict and cannot understand why we don't let her around our kids. She once failed a drug test and cried because she didn't understand how she could have failed. We found out later she smoked the whole night before said drug test. Well, drug tests only fail uneducated people who abuse drugs and don't contribute to society and live off welfare. Obviously, if you're only using drugs for a bit of fun, the test says it's okay. Grew up with a kid whose sense of grandeur was out of this world. It went beyond one-upping and desperately grasping to be the center of attention. In his mind he was the strongest, smartest, fastest, etc. person in the planet. I spoke to him a little when he was in his early 20s, and just to see if he was still the same I asked him about MMA, and without missing a beat he started talking like he was the best fighter on the planet. This was around the time Ronda Rousey was picking up stakes, so I asked him if he could beat her. Straight face told me he could and would not hear anything else. That's just one example of it. He spends most of his time in jail because he believes he can outrun the cops. He can't. You can't tell him otherwise either. Because of him there I came up with my own name for such insane narcissism. Protagonist syndrome. He is the main character of this story called The Universe. We are all extras to his movie. I love it. Protagonist syndrome. I'ma steal that friend. I have a friend who used to, and still kinda does, think he's a god or some sort of tough guy, I don't know. Anyway, he's a strong guy, no doubt, but he walks and talks like he's a force to be reckoned with. I remember once in high school he got into a verbal argument with a guy and he said, "You can't kick my butt. I'm basically the son of Thor." He gives off this vibe that he'll yeet you out of a window, but in reality he's just a big teddy bear with anger issues. He's never been in a fight. I think at some point he did it as a joke, but there was a phase in high school where he was almost convinced that he was the strongest kid in school. That's why all the jocks hated him. Because he was born with natural strength, but they had to work for it, or so he claimed. It was more cringy than anything, but there were times I'd look at him and be like, you honestly cannot seriously think like this. My father was a champion at crazy delusional mental gymnastics. For instance, I had to lock the bathroom door because he would always walk in without knocking and then get mad at me for having my privacy invaded. One day I was home alone and I went into the bathroom and purposely didn't lock the bathroom door because I felt like a tiny rebel. Of course, he showed up unexpectedly and walked in on me. Then he yelled at me something like, "What if I had been a robber and I had found you in here with your pants down?" So, a robber who robs poor people and is turned on by girls peeing? That's a real threat. apparently. Another time I was going to Taste of Chicago and he told me I had to put on a bra because someone might rip off my shirt and I wouldn't be able to run away in the ridiculous shoes I was wearing. I got a kick out of imagining myself running shirtless through a crowd, waving my arms and screaming, "Stop that man. He stole my shirt, what a weirdo." He wasn't just weird, he had some serious sexual issues that he was projecting onto you. I know an overweight 32-year-old guy who isn't attractive who genuinely believes he's gonna lose the weight and be a top model. He's also under the impression he's one of the most talented drag queens in our large city and that in a year or two, after some dance classes, he'll be a backup dancer for major pop stars. And I mean he seriously believes this, as in it's his life plan. Eureka. My ex-wife. She has created stories that are completely untrue and even contradicts herself. When called out for contradicting elements of her story, she becomes violent. Not 0-100 of course, but if I would press the issue it would eventually become physical. Times I dropped it after she couldn't rationalize discrepancies in her story she would later bring it up, change what she says happened and then blame me for the previous rendition. Had a media teacher once who said he invented the Marmite Jolid. He didn't. Also claimed he was shortlisted to play Marty McFly in Back to the Future. He was 5 when that came out. Then he suddenly had to leave the school as he had been given £500. 000 on grant to make a film. When the new teacher started we had to redo our whole first year of media studies because old teacher had no qualifications to teach and made most of the terms up that he taught us. It was miraculous that I managed to get an E on my AS level after that. Was expecting to fail. The old teacher was a great person, just deluded and not actually a teacher, but he was kind and he cared a lot about us students. When I was having an awful time in an abusive relationship he made me hot chocolate and chatted with me most mornings to help cheer me up. He also did food Fridays where we all bought snacks and drinks to class and could do more laid back work. Cool guy, just faked his whole life sadly. Shows how bad screening was for employment at our school though. Worse still was the caretaker who abused his grandson and other people before him and was a registered sex offender and somehow was able to work at our school for 4 years until his abuse on his grandson meant he was arrested. How does a sex offender get a job at a school? My mom's parents. We still love them, but stay in their presence any longer than about 30 minutes and they inevitably either get political or start demanding money. Grandma believes it is our responsibility to give her money because we have some and she doesn't. She also believes that communism is horrible and anybody who believes in it needs to be kicked out of the country. She makes an exception for me because you don't really believe that. You're just going through a liberal phase before you understand how the world works. My dad. He lectures me about doing my homework and then distracts me from doing my homework with the exact same points. Ex-wife spent a good year projecting. Everything out of her mouth was something she was guilty of, and the amount of false justification was hard to deal with. I try not to say she was crazy, kind of cliche, but the way her mind worked was astounding and unbelievable by myself and all my sane family and friends. I had to explain to my little brothers that yes, their mum, my stepmom, was a hypocrite but they should still listen to her because she is right about those things. Tumblr user. There's a ton of these nuts, including this one butthole who pretended she wasn't sending me any anon hate despite her accidentally forgetting to hit the anon button and everything from the activity notifications down to the IP address proved it was her. I had to explain multiple times to a person that, yes, marijuana is a drug, but drug does not equal bad. They insisted that marijuana is not a drug, and gave me links to websites that specifically say marijuana is a unique drug as proof. It wasn't a drug, though, it was a unique drug according to them. Just everything my future mother-in-law ever says or does is utterly delusional, and I'm not the sort of person to just say things like that. The woman decided that threatening to hurt her son was a great way to stop him proposing to me. Why does she have a problem with me? Because I'm autistic, a vocal LGBT ally, 1/8 non-white, the other 7/8 is white but she doesn't care, and I don't want children. And she is extremely ableist, racist and homophobic, and thinks she is entitled to grandchildren despite the fact that her son, my very soon to be fiancé, doesn't want kids. Lady, I get being protective and only wanting the best for your son, but you cross the fricking line. Reminds me of the man who killed his own kids to get back at his babadums. My aunt. She somehow convinced herself that she was rich and started dropping hundreds of dollars on dresses for her kid who'd only wear them for a few hours before getting tired of them. She put her kid into expensive dance schools and social activities. She even bought a few horses with the intention of building her own private farm. She is now in bankruptcy and can barely afford clothes from Walmart. Had to sell or give away her animals because she could no longer afford to feed them and had come to realize that the way she treated them, not feeding them for days at a time, was not a good thing to do. Unfortunately, she still tries to act like she's all that and a bag of chips, but the people who interact with her know better. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.